Hey guys, welcome to Juicy Tea, where I read out the best stories on Reddit, so you don't have to. The funny, shocking, and satisfyingly juicy. Today is Antiwork Monday, with a few stories that will help you get through the week. Our first story comes from the pettyrevenge subreddit. Boss forced me to give away my hard-earned money, so I sabotaged her bonus. Posted by Between My Ears. Every year, the company I work for has a huge fundraising campaign. They solicit from all employees to voluntarily contribute towards charities directly from their paycheck, pre-tax. You're encouraged and very heavily pressured to donate to pre-selected charities of their choice, in small amounts per month for the year, or one big lump sum. If you did cave and do this, it'd be better to do monthly payments, because if they fire you or you quit, at least it's not the full year of payments they're taking from you. Think lots of email reminders and signage all over the company walls. Ploys of having your name entered into prize drawings. It didn't matter how much you contributed, prizes were always won by company executives and leadership. The company had running totals for each department on how many people were contributing. They wanted 100% participation from all departments. It was supposed to be private and anonymous and only show numbers. I quickly learned it wasn't as anonymous or voluntary as advertised. If one or two people were holding back, they were usually approached by the administrator and pressured to participate. What's really strange is the administrator of my department at the time, who was usually very stoic and stern, became giddy about the charity campaign. It was weird and raised alarms. One year, I was struggling hard, so I wasn't going to contribute. I was so broke. Here comes the admin lady into the office. We are almost at 100% participation. Claps giddy squee. She looks around and starts to question each person. She was eyeballing me the whole time, trying to subtly make her way to me. She gets to my desk. Have you made your contribution yet? Without thinking, I should have just told her it was personal. I told her I was still considering which charity. She pulls a chair over to my desk with a sob story from one of the charities and how the money helps those in need. She asked me to pull up the charity website and literally walked me through entering my contribution. So, as a good little naive worker, I did as I was basically being forced to do, and contributed a minimum of $24 a year at $2 a month from my measly salary. I made our department reach 100% participation. Who cares, right? The next year, I purposely waited until the last second to make my contribution, to see if I got the same one-on-one chat with the admin lady. Sure enough, here she comes, with the same sob story that she has memorized. Once again, she baby-talked me through making my contribution while she watched. I soon became her target to get rid of. She was out for my job, so she separated me from people I got along well with, including my direct boss, and made me report directly to her. I knew I had to get out of there quickly, or I'd lose my job. I applied for positions and wound up transferring to another department within a few weeks. It ended up being an amazing move, and one of my favourite positions to date. In this new department, they organised and ran multiple company, city and county-wide events, one of the biggest being the charity campaign for the whole company. I brought up to my new coworkers how incredibly weird my previous admin lady was at that time of year. They said, well, of course she wanted 100% participation. Admins get a bonus when their departments are at 100% participation. You can bet your sweet rear ends I started telling everyone in my previous department about that little tidbit. The next year, that department had one of the lowest participation efforts. Being that I was in a better place in life and actually liked my new department and leadership, I began willingly contributing. The new admin would take that bonus and buy everyone lunch, or some other form of thanks. I wonder if that admin lady ever found out the OP was the one behind her department participation suddenly tanking. Bet that bonus you cost her was a hell of a lot more than the $24 she cost you. Petty revenge goes wrong. Posted by Leather Ad 5602. 20 years ago, I worked with a guy who was a massive pain in the butt. We worked in a small open plan office and he was just the most annoying person you can imagine. He would do things like sit at his desk and run his hands through his hair, look at whatever it was that he'd brushed off his scalp, and then wipe it into the carpet. Ugh! He did this multiple times a day. He'd leave half cups of coffee in his waste bin, and the cleaner would spill it on herself when she emptied it. His grandparents bought him a house. He was about 22 years old, with no mortgage. The house had 5 bedrooms, no furniture, and he lived in it alone. He was awkward, boastful, and not very bright. He never paid for a shout when we were out for beers, and he never repaid people who bought him coffees. One day, I asked after him. "Anyone seen Brad?" "I think he's gone to the toilet," said Rachel, our researcher. So I walked down the hall, and sure enough, he was sitting in the cubicle, presumably doing a poop. So I quickly got a handful of paper towels and soaked them in water. Scrunching it into a ball, I threw the soaping bundle over the cubicle door. He screamed bloody murder, and I ran back to the office, telling Rachel what I'd done, and to not tell him that I'd left my desk. Brad came out, hair and shirt saturated, with bits of paper towel in his hair. He asked me why I did it, but I denied any knowledge, and Rachel and I played dumb. Stifling that laughter was the hardest thing I've ever done, but he knew. A week later or so, Brad asked where I was, to which Rachel replied, "In the loo." Brad decides to get his revenge, except at that time I was actually down the road for some reason, but coincidentally, there was a person in the toilet. He was the managing director of an Asian car company affiliate who shared our floor. Yep, Brad slang dunked a stranger with a ball of wet paper towel. A stranger for whom face was a very serious matter. So serious, in fact, that he pursued it with our boss when he returned from overseas. Our boss quickly got to the bottom of it, and Brad was fired. Sorry, Brad. Whoops. No tips? No problem. Posted by PHBalance79. This was over 20 years ago, but when it comes to mind, it still makes me smile. I was 20 and working for one of the largest event staffing agencies in Chicago. They're gone now, but they were number 1 at the time. And we were contracted to work the opening of the new Nordstrom on Grand Avenue. This was a very big deal. They needed so many bodies that they also hired several of our friendly competitors to cover all of the bases. I had wanted to become a bartender, but it was still a few months before I turned 21. The bosses knew this, but were so hard up to meet their obligations that they didn't care. I ended up getting what can be described as a crash course. My training for a position of extraordinary craft, nuance, knowledge and precision was about 45 minutes long. And suddenly, I was the only underage professional bartender in the city. I was stationed at a specialty satellite bar, which is to say, me and another guy, I think his name was Daniel, had a small bar tucked away on an upper floor of a huge multi-story shopping complex in women's wear, with only a few ingredients in huge quantities, and responsibility for making only 2 cocktails, the Harvey Wallbanger and the Madras. This was a star-studded event for the creme de la creme of the city. And with huge volume, speed would be essential, so we pumped out as many drinks as we could for a few hours. Now, no one is required to tip, especially an event where everything is already paid for, but it's a nice thing that encourages prompt and professional service, even favoritism in some cases. And if you were in attendance at this particular event, you sure weren't hurting for capital. But literally no one would give us $1. We were sweating, hauling, pumping, smiling all the while, and people weren't even being polite about it, let alone tossing us a quarter for what I could only describe as a Herculean effort. It was frustrating. Inevitably, someone who just wanted a drink with no baggage came up and asked for just a vodka on ice. And it was a top shelf product, Grey Goose if I recall, so Daniel poured them a pretty heroic amount. They walked away without a word, not even a thank you for bending the rules at our own peril. I watched Daniel do this and saw the look on his face. We caught each other's gaze and had one of those moments where we communicated without a word. We nodded at each other and began our petty vengeance. The vodka, as I said, was all paid for, and we had a lot of it on hand, with reserves off the floor. So we started pouring doubles, even triples, pretty much exclusively. All bets were off. Want a screwdriver instead? Have a double. Would the lady prefer a simple Cape Cod? Better make it a triple. It's already bought, so who cares? Just want a vodka on ice? Have an entire glass. We're here to serve. No one in charge cared if we strayed from the recipe book, but eventually an event captain did approach us to let us know that someone had mentioned we're pouring a little heavy, so maybe pull back a bit. We both said, "Sure thing, boss," and went right back to getting people completely hammered. All sense of decorum and gentility evaporated around our bar, and after an hour, we had people dancing in clothes and lingerie they didn't pay for, and making out with mannequins. The works. I know for sure someone vomited in the swimwear aisle. We still weren't making any tips, but finally it felt worth the effort. At the end of the event, when we were breaking down our bar, a younger guy we hadn't served, we could tell because he wasn't poop-faced, came up to the bar and said, "I used to do events and it's not easy. I could tell you guys were really working hard and you deserve this." He tipped us each a $10 bill. He was the greatest capper to a banner evening and I salute him. The rest of that crowd can pound glass. This is a bit of a shout back to last week's unethical life hack. If an employer sucks, don't take it out on the customers. Hook the customers up. Seems to be extra effective with alcohol. Did we just silently add an hour to the standard workday or what? Posted by McSmallDig12. Growing up, the standard workday was always described as 9 to 5. Hell, there's even a song about it. The last 5 or so years though, I've been hearing more and more people say 8 to 5 instead. My mum asked me if those were my working hours once, and I was like, what the F? No, it's 9 to 5. Even my wife now starts at 8 AM, and her reasoning is that she takes an hour for lunch, so if she worked 9 to 5, it wouldn't be a full 8-hour workday. What the hell is going on? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. Glad someone else said it, because I've been wondering about this. We always say 9 to 5, but no jobs actually seem to start later than 8:30. Glad I'm not the only one who thinks they're going crazy. Down in the comments, Sterno Journo shed some light on this. Up until the late 80s, early 90s, an 8-hour shift with a paid lunch break was the norm. Once companies decided to stop paying for lunch breaks, people started working 9-hour shifts with unpaid lunch breaks. Quasi Canuck says, "I doubt they decided so much as realised the law allowed them to switch to unpaid lunch and then added an extra hour because greed." Blue Rose 1197 says, "The laws are there to force employers to give their employees a break. Office workers would normally just eat at their desk while working, but factory workers and other labourer types would be forced to work 8 hours with no breaks, and that's why the break laws were put in place, to ensure those people actually got a break and to eat in the middle of their shift. If you're being forced to work during your unpaid lunch break, I recommend making yourself unavailable during that time. I personally make sure I leave the office. I know people who go sit in their cars. If that isn't an option, you need to discuss with your boss how that time needs to be paid if you're still expected to be available and do tasks. If they refuse, gather evidence and take it to the labour board as they're stealing time from you." I agree with the sentiment, but it's not always that easy. From my personal experience, they don't technically force you to work through your break, but there's a lot of pressure to do so, and to stay late each night too. No extra pay, no bonuses. But hey, if they're dumb enough to put it in writing, then hell yeah, take it to the labour board. And remember, they need you more than you need them. I post new content every day, so subscribe for more juicy tea.